I was 23 years old and working late at the print shop on Tunnelgaten that Friday night. February 28, 1986. I remember the cold the way you remember pain not as a memory, but as something your body still holds. I had just stepped outside for a cigarette when I heard it. One shot. Then another. Sharp, flat sounds that did not echo the way you think a gunshot should. I thought someone had thrown a bottle. Stockholm was quiet that way you never assumed the worst because the worst never happened here. Not in Sweden. Not to us. I walked towards Sveavägen because that was the direction the sound came from, and because I was 23 and stupid and curious. A woman was screaming. Not the frantic screaming of panic, but the low, sustained scream of someone who has just watched the world change shape permanently. There was a man on the ground. A woman kneeling over him. People running past me from every direction. I did not know it was Olof Palme. Not then. I knew it was a man, and that he was not moving, and that there was blood on the pavement spreading dark and slow under the streetlight. The police came. Then more police. Then the kind of silence that happens when a crowd stops making noise because the noise no longer seems appropriate. Someone near me said the name. Palme. And the word moved through the crowd like a current. I gave a statement that night to a young officer, who wrote everything down with a pencil and kept asking me to repeat myself. I told him I saw a man walking north on Sveavägen after the shots. Tall, a long coat, moving fast but not running. Not running was the thing that stayed with me. Running would have been suspicious. He walked the way a man walks when he knows nobody is looking at him yet. They took my name and address. They told me someone would follow up. Nobody ever did. 4 weeks I watched the news the way everyone in Sweden watched the news obsessively, collectively, like a country that had discovered it was mortal. The police had a suspect almost immediately. Christer Pettersson, a drifter, a criminal. Lisbeth Palme identified him. He was convicted. Then acquitted on appeal. The man I had seen walking north on Sveavägen was never publicly named. I described him twice more, once to a journalist and once to a detective who came to the print shop in 1988. The detective had tired eyes and a briefcase full of papers, and he listened to me with the patience of a man who had heard everything and believed nothing could still surprise him. I asked him if they had anyone. He said they were pursuing multiple leads. I asked him about the tall man in the long coat. He wrote it down. The years passed the way years do when a wound doesn't close. Pettersson died in 2004. Palme's murder remained officially unsolved. I got married, had 2 daughters, left the print shop and opened a small hardware store in Essay with paragraph Dermarm. I thought about that night less and less, but I never stopped thinking about it entirely. Some nights I would be lying awake, and I would see the streetlight on the pavement and the dark spreading underneath the man and the woman kneeling over him, and I would think about the person who walked north and never ran. In 2020 the prosecutor announced they were closing the investigation. The prime suspect they named was already dead. A man named Stig Engstra paragraph M. The Skandia man, the papers called him. An advertising executive, who had been nearby that night, and had inserted himself into the investigation afterward, giving statements, positioning himself as a witness. I read every article. I looked at the photographs. He was not the man I saw walking north. He was shorter. His coat was different. I called the number listed for the prosecutor's office, and left a message explaining who I was and what I had seen 34 years ago, and that I did not think the man they were naming was the man I had seen. No one called back. The case was closed. I do not know what I expected. I am 63 years old now and I understand that official conclusions are not the same as truth, that closed cases are not the same as solved ones, and that a country can decide it needs to stop looking even when the answer hasn't fully arrived. What I know is what I saw. A man walking north on Sveavägen. Not running. Unhurried. Certain of himself in the particular way of a person who has just done something irreversible and has already accepted it. I have carried that image for 40 years and I will carry it until I cannot carry anything anymore. Olof Palme walked home from a cinema with his wife on a Friday night because he believed he lived in a country where that was safe. He was right about everything except that one thing. And whoever walked north that night understood something we did not, that the idea of Sweden, as a place exempt from its own darkness, was something that could be taken away in a single flat sound that did not even echo. We have never fully recovered. Not the investigation, not the country, and not me. Some losses teach you what you were made of. This one taught us what we were not.